Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, as always, is my good friend, my buddy, back in his beanie toboggan tonight, Matt. Matt, what's going on, man?
Hey, not much, Mark. You know, it did frost over here in central Kentucky last night, so I do feel justified putting on the stocking hat here, the beanie or whatever you might call it, toboggan, or for our Canadian listeners, the toque. But
Yeah,
man, I'm doing well. You look like you're doing well. Look like you got a little sun over the weekend.
Yeah, I did. I got out and got a little sun, was flying my drone. It was a lot of fun. Got out to Eastern Kentucky to visit my parents, and we got out and stood around out in the beautiful sunshine and flew that drone all over the place. Got to show my parents. My dad, he's a photography hound, kind of like me. That's where I learned how to do it. And he was pretty thrilled getting to watch that. So it was a lot of fun, man. So good time, but I just wonder what's underneath the beard now, Matt. It's probably just like bright white underneath there. So I can't shave it now that we're getting into spring and summer.
Oh yeah. You might have to use a little self tanner or something. We always in college, we had a running bet that whenever like two people, my friends and I would make a bet, the loser, one of the things we would always go to is the loser would either have to A, shave their eyebrows, or B, get a spray tan.
Oh man, I can't imagine shaving my eyebrows off, dude. That's crazy. But hey, that's what being young's all about, right?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, that's part of it.
Kind of crazy. All right, people don't want to hear us talking about our eyebrows,
exactly.
Matt, so,
yeah.
All right, I probably need to thank our sponsors. So I need to thank the Stave Restaurant out there in Millville, Kentucky. Stop by and visit them. Chef Kyle Klatka doing some great stuff, man. I was out there last week. I got to go out to Castle and Key. I talked about that last week, that new release. It's their barrel proof rye that they put out. So I got to pick up a bottle of that, and I stopped in at the Stave and had a delicious Nashville hot chicken sandwich, and may have had a beer or two while I was out there as well. But stop by and see those guys. They're right there between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve. They're doing some great stuff. You can find them online as well, thestavekentucky.com. And then also we want to thank 3 Chord Bourbon. We appreciate their sponsorship as well. Master blender and distiller Ari Sussman. He's just doing some amazing stuff up there in Matt's neck of the woods in Michigan, blending up some great stuff for sure. So check them out online at 3chordbourbon.com. And again, we really appreciate their sponsorship. So Matt, now that we've done that, you want to tell everybody who we have with us?
Sure thing. Do we want to go through the birthdays real fast though?
Oh, Matt, you know what? I'm glad you said that. Yes, we do. We have two birthdays this week for our Bourbon Society members. Stephen Simas. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but Stephen, I apologize for butchering your last name, man. But
happy birthday regardless.
Happy birthday. And Dan Kaminsky, happy birthday to you as well. So our 2 Barrel Society members that have birthdays this week. So Matt, thanks for that reminder, man. So now, you want to tell everybody who we have with us?
Absolutely. Let's get right down to it. We have joining us this evening, afternoon, morning, whenever you are, the CEO of Country Smooth, Lori Carcich. Lori, welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Thank you, Mark and Matt, for having us. We are big supporters and fans of what you guys have been doing for years, and it's an honor to be on your show today. Thank you for having us.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. I know that our Instagram, we've been following you guys for quite a while, so that's really great. I know we've communicated back and forth quite a bit off and on Instagram, so it's really cool to finally get to sit down with you and get to taste through your product. So we're really looking forward to this. We've had this one on the calendar for a while, so I'm really excited. And you sent us a great collection of goodies, and extremely appreciative of that as well, for sure.
Well, it's definitely a pleasure, and you guys are the first to help us break two of our new products and we can go through the different products. You guys can take us through that. But really excited to be here tonight, and I think that we're going to hopefully talk a little bit about Country Smooth, kind of how we started, where we are, and where we're going. Not just from a product line perspective, obviously at the core of who we are, from the culture of Country Smooth and who we support, and to the products that we have for you guys to taste tonight with us.
Yeah, that'll be great. That's usually our format. It's always kind of like a who are you, who's the brand, and what have you done, and where are you going. So that sounds like a perfect evening for us. So before we get into the discussion and everything, we've got the first round poured up tonight, and we've got something new. If you want to tell us, I guess we should probably tell you which one we poured up, but we went with the bourbon. So that'll make it easier for you to tell everybody what it is that we're drinking this first round.
Okay, so it is with excitement and much anticipation that Country Smooth has now put out Small Batch Straight Bourbon whiskey. It was a bourbon whiskey that was designed and formulated to be smooth, as obviously Country Smooth whiskey is and has been. Aged a bit longer. We're aged at least 2 years.
Okay.
80% corn, so it's definitely more of a smoother bourbon because of higher corn content.
Okay.
And excited to hear what you guys have to say about it.
Yeah. So that's really cool. So this is you said 80% corn. Is it rye? Is the other grain
Rye.
as well?
20%
Okay.
rye.
So it's 80-20. Okay. All right.
Aged at least 2 years. It's at this point
Okay.
2 years and 5 months.
Okay.
Country
All right.
Smooth American whiskey was aged at least 6 months. So we wanted to produce a product that was still smooth enough and has similar textures and profiles as our American whiskey, but is aged a bit longer. And it's obviously straight, meaning it's aged at least 2 years.
Right. Yeah. For our listeners at home that aren't familiar with all the terminology, once you see something that's listed as a straight whiskey, straight bourbon, then it is going to be aged at least a minimum of 2 years. So there you go. That's good knowledge for people at home that aren't familiar enough with all the terminology. So that's a good point, Lori. Thanks for pointing that out. Matt, you're over there sniffing on it already. I see you working on it. What are you picking up on this one?
It's got a good nose of caramel and vanilla with it, and I know the corn is coming through as well. It's nice to know that it's 80% corn, because I get a lot of the sweetness coming through on the corn, and I pick up something on the nose. Really reminds me of like a waffle cone.
Interesting.
Yeah, if you think like ice cream, like in like a fresh waffle cone, it's got the nose on it. It really reminds me of that. It's really pleasant.
Yeah, that's funny you say that, Matt.
That's a good thing.
I never would have picked that out, but as soon as you said it, of course, it's like, oh yeah, man, I see exactly, almost like a vanilla ice cream in a waffle cone. You get that.
Yeah, I think that
the vanilla sweetness.
Yeah.
I can see. Yeah, I get the corn. I think earlier I mentioned I pick up a little, almost like a kind of a butterscotch kind of nose on it as well. Just a little bit. Lori, what are we missing, and what are we getting right over there?
Right. So when I create a Country Smooth, it is really important for me to obviously have the package be different or more modern styled. Screen printed on labels, 100% made in America. That was important that the actual experience of drinking all of our Country Smooth products are smooth and inviting. So it's important for me in formulating this product, as well as our American whiskey, that the initial nose is very inviting, aromatic, and enjoyable to traditional whiskey drinkers like the two of you, and bourbon drinkers, as well as more novice bourbon whiskey drinkers, men and women both. It was important that we have, I'm not going to call it a traditional burn, but as you know, you guys are both experienced bourbon drinkers and whiskey drinkers. It was important to create sort of the traditional, or have sort of the traditional whiskey notes towards the back end, but not, for me at least, not on the front end. So
okay.
Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. I understand definitely what you're saying there. So now kind of gotten into the nose a little bit. So let's talk about you now, Lori. now that we've introduced the whiskey, and this is, like you said, this is like a kind of like a grand opening world premiere on the Bourbon Life podcast of this new small batch bourbon. So we're really excited. The small batch straight bourbon. So we're really excited about that. But let's talk a little bit about you. So tell us, Lori, a little bit about your background and who you are, and so our listeners know how it is that you got into the whiskey industry.
So I created Country Smooth back in 2015 because I wanted to be able to enjoy whiskey neat. I was not a whiskey drinker at all, but I was born and raised by brown. Brown liquor was around sort of my lifestyle since I was very young, through obviously family events, sporting events, music events, also the music I listened to, family, friends, hosting events at my home. And I wanted to be a part of that genuinely, that lifestyle. It's not just what you're drinking, but
right.
You guys both can, understand this. It's the entire lifestyle. So I wanted to be able to drink whiskey neat and create a product that was very smooth, that was deeply rooted in celebrating America, based on how I was born and raised. And I believe America's first female founder, CEO, and owner of an American whiskey company at the time.
Oh, well, that's great. Yeah.
Really, wasn't really important to me when I back in 2015, but I think more and more women are drinking whiskey. So it's kind of exciting to be a part of that movement. And obviously, so prior to starting Country Smooth, I was an auditor for a CPA firm out of college. I have a business degree with an emphasis in accounting and finance.
Okay.
He was a very successful CFO for many, many years, who taught me, if you understand business and accounting and numbers and how balance sheets and income statements and cash flow statements work together, and you understand the components of business, then everything else will come over time. Because I think my core culture is more sales and marketing and development based in accounting and finance. So I went to work for a CPA firm and learned a ton about all the things that my dad taught me I would learn, which is accounting and finance and how companies are formed, how they operate, potential issues. It was right during the Sarbanes-Oxley or Sarbanes major Enron scandals. So we were able to really emphasize, in the fraud risk assessment and all of the different components that went into that. And then I had my first of 3 children. My oldest is almost 15 years old, which is crazy. And I wanted to start my own consulting practice raising my children. So I did that for about 10 years and developed a fantastic business development and accounting and finance business. And towards the end of that, it was more on the end of creating businesses for large entities, for casinos, for individuals, which is where I really was experienced in learning how to start and grow with companies. I had no experience in alcohol whatsoever. That was to me, which is a steep learning curve in the liquor business for
sure.
So when I realized what I wanted to do back in 2015, I completed hundreds of hours of research in the industry and in the whiskey and bourbon business. I toured Tennessee, Kentucky, Oregon, and really sort of became very aware of, as much as I could at the time, the bourbon and whiskey industry and opportunities and also challenges in starting my own company. And in 2016, we began selling Country Smooth whiskey in Southern California, which is where I live. And fast forward to today, which is many times and exciting achievements as well as challenges. We are now distributed in 11 states and are increasing our product line to 3 products and growing quickly as well.
So I'm just curious. So here you are in 2014, we'll say 2014, 15. You've got a successful consulting career. Things are going well. What was it in your mind that What was it that made you say, hey, let's go out and start a business about something that we really aren't experienced in and we don't have a lot of knowledge about? Let's just do it. I mean, that's a huge step. So how did that just come about?
That's a great question. And my husband said the same thing. He's like, you have it pretty good right now. You have a great consulting business and you're able to compete in triathlons and raise our children and host events at our home. But I really, in my heart of hearts, I was definitely convicted to start Country Smooth. And I wanted to obviously create a product that was all about celebrating America, creating really good quality products at a great price point, and making this a lifestyle, not just for myself, but for our company, for America, and celebrating America, with
Sure.
Supporting different up and coming country music artists, as well as different military non-for-profits, etc. So it definitely took a big leap of faith. But when I started doing my research and meeting, key suppliers and key team members in my due diligence portion of the business, I realized it was something that seemed like it was the right thing to do.
That's great. I mean, that's a great story, and it's kind of Matt, go ahead.
I got to interject here, Mark. We didn't even bring it up for once, but we had a little Bourbon Life bingo square with Lori. You mentioned triathlon,
that's right? Yeah,
and believe it or not, Mark and I, that's how we met, was through the conversation of triathlon. As Mark and I are both Ironmen, so that's funny that you had brought. Oh yeah, you brought that up. Yep.
Yeah, wow. I did Ironman Louisville. Well, I attempted it the first time in 2012 and unfortunately had to DNF it. But then in 2013, ended up hiring a coach and went back and trained and went back in 2013 in August and knocked it out and finished it. And then Matt, you did Chattanooga in 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're still training right now in the hopes that you're going to, where are you headed up to Wisconsin?
Yeah, Wisconsin in September.
Yeah.
Wow. So Louisville and Chattanooga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have not done Chattanooga. Yeah, he did Chattanooga,
so, right.
and I did Louisville. So yeah, we've knocked both of those out, and I have since gone into living the bourbon life and drinking and enjoying bourbon. So I successfully completed my Ironman, and I think my triathlon days are over. Matt though still continues to train on a regular basis, and he's an inspiration to me. One of these days I'll get back out and do it. But I'd seen a picture. I was going to ask you about that, Lori, because I saw a picture of you. I think you were hiking and you had a weighted vest on, I think a week or so ago, and you mentioned something about triathlon. So I was going to ask you about that. What have you done and what are your plans with that?
So first of all, kudos to both of you for being Ironman.
Thanks.
I mean, that I don't think I could ever do. I mean, that is a serious commitment, training, and the competition. Kudos. I mean, we're gonna drink to you guys completing.
I'll drink to that. Come on, Matt.
Yeah, cheers to that. It's a long process to not only us, but all the people that put up with us during that time.
Yeah, that's the big thing. My wife and family, friends. Yeah, everybody that put up with me while I was training for that madness.
So I don't know. I'm not sure if everyone knows the distance. Can you guys tell our friends on the our Bourbon Life listeners the distance of Ironman?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, sure. It starts out with a 2.4 mile swim, and then you hop on your bicycle for 112 miles on the bike and finish with a full marathon, so 26.2 miles on foot, and rounds out for a total of 140.6 miles.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's fun. And you get 17 hours to do it. So, it's not a weekend event. It's a one day, 17 hours. And, it took me 16 and a half, but I still did it. So I still got the medal, it's hanging on my wall back over my shoulder. I keep it up here just to remind me of, you said you don't think you could ever do it, Lori. It's one of those things in life where, when you realize you've done it, you realize there's nothing in life you can't do. So, and it's something that nobody will ever be able to take away from me, regardless of whatever happens to me in life. It's one of those things that I'm probably most proud of. So anyway, that's kind of, that's my story, but that's cool that you train. So yeah. With
I'm
all
impressed.
you do.
I'm impressed with both of you. So I have competed in 7 sprint triathlons.
Great.
Nowhere near the Ironman, but 7 sprint triathlons in California, which, I have, after having each of my 3 children, I always rounded up friends and family to start getting back into shape. Okay, guys, we've got to get back into shape, so let's go compete in a sprint triathlon. That was kind of our way to it together, right? To like force ourselves to do it. But this past summer, my girlfriend and I took up backpacking. Which is an entirely different beast, but just like you said, Mark, it's one of those things once you're able to achieve certain successes, in this case, backpacking to for example, we did the Grand Canyon, 55 miles over 4.5 days.
Oh yeah.
1,000 feet elevation gain over 4.5 days. Then we did Catalina, which is off the coast of Southern California. That's 40 miles. And then we did 3 tall peaks in Southern California, which were 10,200, 11,000, and 9,800 feet elevation, total. It's like once you can complete those challenges with a 40-pound backpack on, like the weight for us, just like in your Ironman triathlons, you think I think I can do just about anything. So she and I completed 6 different trips, 110 miles, I want to say collectively, in 3 months. So we decided we're going to do the John Muir Trail, backpack the John Muir Trail, which is legendary in the Sierra Nevadas. I don't know if you guys have heard of it before.
I'm sure Matt has, yeah.
Okay. I'm watching you nod, Matt.
Yeah.
The entire trip starts in Yosemite National Park, which I've climbed half done before 3 times. And it ends at Mount Whitney, the Whitney Portal. And I can't be gone for 210 miles, right? Continuously, because the business and my children. But we are going to, I think we committed and we have permits to do 160 miles from Mammoth to the Whitney Portal in July in one trip.
Wow. That's impressive. Now, see, you're talking Matt's language there. Matt's
you said a lot of climber. Yeah, near and dear to my heart there with Yosemite and Mammoth. I love Mammoth.
So you've been, Yosemite, I grew up going there every summer with friends and family, and there's nothing like it, in my opinion, in the entire world. I mean, it's just natural beauty, and if you're a backpacker, a hiker, an adventurist like you are, the things that it's endless opportunities. So that is going to be in middle July. Hopefully we get to that point where we're there. And the weighted vest helps us train, right? Yeah. So, for so long we would train with our backpacks on the local mountains just to keep that whole balance of weight on our back and climbing up and that hills and mountains locally to train for 160 miles straight. But the weighted vest definitely helps, and the whiskey, of course.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because we had a couple of folks from Wilderness Trail on, and they are both ultra marathoners. And I keep forgetting his Jared. Is that right?
Jared. Yeah. Jared Smith.
Yeah. Jared Smith, who's one of their ambassadors down there. Jared was talking about it, and he actually does these ultra marathons, and he takes whiskey or bourbon, and he'll leave it at the aid stations, and then he'll run the majority of the race. Is that what he does, Matt? It's like he'll run the majority of the race, and then
I thought he said he got 30 miles or something in, and kind of you reach that low point, and all of a sudden
stop and have a drink of bourbon on this 50 mile trail run, which is kind of crazy. So that makes a lot of sense. Well, I'll tell you what, guys, we're really at the end of the first period, session, segment, whatever we want to call it. So let's take a quick break, and we'll get a word from our sponsor, And then we'll come right back and get more with Lori Carcich, the CEO of Country Smooth. So everybody just sit tight and we will be right back. Hey, Bourbon Lifers. When you're out hunting for those hard-to-find bottles or just enjoying the distilleries of Central Kentucky, you're going to work up an appetite. And when it's time to refuel, we suggest that you visit our good friends Rebecca and Eric Burnworth at the Stave Restaurant. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, close to Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, the Stave Restaurant is just off the beaten path, nestled on the banks of Glens Creek. With a newly redesigned menu, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day featuring an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. You can take our word for it. The food alone is worth the trip to the Stave. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. And you can even purchase bottles of bourbon to take home with you while you're there. Make sure to follow the Stave on Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky, or visit them online at thestavekentucky.com to stay up to date on everything that's going on. The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise, right here in the heart of bourbon country. All right, everybody, welcome back to round or session 2, whatever you prefer to call it, of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, as always, is my good friend, my bourbon drinking Ironman buddy, Matt. Matt, how you doing over there?
Oh, Mark, I'm doing great, man. We're enjoying a good podcast tonight and also enjoying some beautiful spring weather here in Eastern Kentucky, or Central Kentucky, I guess.
Where are you tonight, Matt?
Where am I?
We're in the Bourbon Life
Studios. That's right.
Having technology issues tonight. I tried a different camera for Matt, and it just kind of failed out on us before we started, unfortunately. So, Matt, one of these days we're going to get this. We're going to get this down, but I think you maybe sabotaged it so we don't ever have to move into doing any type of video stuff, right?
Yeah, I got that face for radio, man.
Whatever, dude. All right, so we're back with Lori Carcich, the CEO of Country Smooth, and we're still drinking in this round 2. We're still finishing up on the new small batch. So, Lori, can you just talk a little bit about the process? Because you started out with the American whiskey, and this is sourced, right? So you're sourcing. Yeah. So you're sourcing this from MGP, is that correct?
Yeah, we are. So we're sourcing this from MGP, obviously somewhat of a custom formulation that was created and formulated to really be country smooth, as was our American whiskey as well.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So these aren't necessarily barrels that they had in stock that they said, hey, we've got some barrels for sale, or is this is kind of your recipe? This is what you guys wanted to produce?
So it's somewhat of barrels they had in stock, different warehouses, different parts of the warehouses that they were stored. As you know, that different locations, different weather, which brings on undulation change of the barrels and how they taste in the end. So it's a bit of that. We actually just bottled our first Country Smooth bourbon, small batch bourbon whiskey just a week ago. Now going out to 7 states this week, which is really, really exciting. But, again, we wanted to create something that was smooth enough. Obviously you mentioned the waffle cone, Matt. Who can turn down a waffle cone, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying.
So when you were blending this, now I know it's bottled in Nashville, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so is it blended there as well, or how does that process work?
Yes, it's blended in Nashville, Tennessee, which we've been bottled there since the inception of Country Smooth. And so the barrels are purchased at MGP after formulating, etc., brought over to Nashville, Tennessee, where they blend with water and the barrels, and they bottle for us.
Okay. All right. So when you're working on this, because this is a brand new product, so did you have something in mind in terms of a target, like a taste, a profile that you were shooting for, or once you got the barrels and everything started getting blended together and you were proofing it down, did you just kind of let that process kind of guide you guys, or was there something that you said, no, I want it to taste like this, and that's what we're shooting for? How did that work?
Right. So great question. And in all the products that we have and we're currently developing, it was always a target taste and profile. It was always, obviously the name is Country Smooth. So whether we have American whiskey 86 proof, which is aged less than 2 years, so it wasn't a straight, whiskey, or the Small Batch Straight Bourbon whiskey, or the next product that we're going to taste, or the products thereafter. We have several coming down the pipeline. It was important that all the products were smooth, hence the name Country Smooth, right? So when doing that, it was like we talked about, it's important that the initial nose was very inviting and aromatic, that the burn wasn't on overall the entire product. It was important to have a more of a burn, but on the back end, not the front end.
Right.
And what the aroma left over in the glass once the bourbon is entirely finished, the glass is finished and consumed, the notes of that were really important to me. Like all the entire experience, really, whatever product we produce needs to be country smooth. So all of that was considered in formulating the small batch that you're drinking right now. So, I'll never forget back in 2016, actually this story was in 2017. We were involved in the celebrity golf tournament the first week that we launched in Southern California in 2016. And at a beautiful golf course in a casino in Southern California, where we handed out these shot glasses, clearly not this shot glass, but these shot glasses filled with Country Smooth whiskey for each of the golfers and, food and beverage directors, etc. A year later, I received a text from the food and beverage director of that casino, who was at the same golf tournament. I wasn't there, but our team was. And he said, "Lori, we missed you this year. And I pulled out your shot glass from my golf bag that I used a year through the tournament. And I put your empty shot glass in a small container in my golf bag. And when I opened the zipper," and he probably golfs once a year at his golf tournament, right?
Right.
But the entire small compartment smells like Country Smooth, which is fantastic. So it sounds silly, but really the point was to be aromatic, and it's not just what we're drinking in the initial nose, but what's left over, the aroma in the glass. And then to his point, when you put that in a concealed environment for a year, is that enjoyable, or does that give too much of a burn impact from a smell perspective?
Right.
So I have that story, and it's kind of funny, but really that was the goal, is the entire experience be smooth and really inviting. And that was the target for this product. The target was for small batch to be very smooth. Obviously, being aged a bit longer, I think you're going to have different textures and profiles on this.
Sure.
I believe that just like with any good bourbon or whiskey, it's important to be able to enjoy neat. And then it's not easier, but people can enjoy it over ice or in cocktail creations, etc. But for me, the test is always, can I enjoy this neat? And
Sure.
that starts from when I open the cap of a bottle to pouring it into a glass and the leftover aroma in that empty glass.
Yeah. So that makes it. So let's get back. Let's talk about the brand a little bit too. So 2015, you had the idea. You're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to start a whiskey brand, right? So you came up with Country Smooth. So tell us a little bit about that name and how you came about with that and what that means as well.
That's a great question. So, obviously Country Smooth was really intended to celebrate America. I'm a very proud American. I believe it's an absolute honor to be an American and what it stands for, where we are today. Lots of sacrifices across the board. So, obviously very patriotic in support of all things Americana. And, for my family growing up, that was, part of that was music and sports and, supporting our military efforts and entertaining and enjoying the American lifestyle, which is, in my opinion, this is the American lifestyle.
Sure.
I wanted to create a company that really celebrates America. So with that, the name obviously Country Smooth. And my goal was, it's not just what we're drinking, it's really, we're Country Smooth, right? Country being, obviously I love country music, but really love for our country, which is one of our marks. And smooth being a smooth tasting bourbon or whiskey or drink that we're drinking. With that, it was important that the entire package be 100% made in USA.
Nice.
which sounds easy to do. And of course, the bourbon has to be a bourbon.
Right.
We know that we can distill whiskey internationally, but to be considered a bourbon, it has to be made in the USA. But the entire package. So for example, glass, when I did my research, I learned that 70% of glass was outsourced from China, France, Mexico, you name it, which is fantastic. But for Country Smooth and who we are to the core culture, and we are made in America. So part of my research and part of my tour was to make sure that we had suppliers that were 100% made in America, that were, obviously very high quality producers and suppliers, as well as affordable, so that on shelves, Country Smooth whiskey is at $24.99 roughly.
Wow.
And,
yeah.
Right. And this small batch bourbon can likely be about $27.99. Right.
Oh, yeah.
So very affordable to the majority of the people, given the quality of the packaging, made in America, and the quality of the components inside the glass.
Yeah, I really like the bottles. I like the design. I like the fact they're tall, skinny. They're easy to hold on to. I'm sure that has made an impact with the bar industry as well. The use of I'm a bartender. There's a Bourbon Life bingo as well. I'm a bartender from 30 plus odd years ago. But when you have those little funny round fat squatty bottles that are hard to grab onto, it's a kind of a pain when you're moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour trying to make drinks for 1,000 people or whatever. I mean, it's nice when you have bottles like that you can grab onto, but those look nice as well. So they're not just, they're practical, but they're also very nice looking bottles. Very sleek, very well designed. So I like that.
Well, I appreciate that. And so in terms of selecting the bottle, obviously Made in America was number one for us. Like I wouldn't even entertain suppliers that were not made in America based on who we are to the culture. But really, being a female, even though I have decent sized hands, it was important. A lot of women have smaller hands. So I wanted to find a bottle that was a great size for small hands.
Gotcha.
Also, too, when you're a brand new brand you're obviously Country Smooth at one time was very new, and even in the new markets some markets were new now. It's important to take up as small of a footprint for shelf space purposes, right?
Sure.
So, right. I considered that. I also took the bottle before we decided on the bottle to, I want to say like 75 stores, liquor stores in Southern California. And I put them on, obviously top shelves wasn't an issue, but middle shelf, bottom shelf, to make sure that this size was not going to be an issue.
Right.
In terms of being too tall for middle shelf, which is the placement we prefer to be in. And as you nailed it, Mark, you're what don't you do, really, quite frankly? So you're an Ironman triathlete, you're a bartender, you're an attorney, you created this podcast. The bartenders love it because it's easy to pick up from the saddle, pour drinks from,
right,
put back, and it does not require major, real estate for shelf space. So really, all of those factors were part of determining Country Smooth. Plus, it was important for us to be more of a modern styled product, from, obviously the bottle size to screen printed on labels, etc.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I tell you what, let's finish up on the small batch and get some final thoughts, since we're about halfway through our second session. All right, Matt. So closing out on this small batch of bourbon, what are your final thoughts on this one?
I like it. Actually, I like it a lot. It's got a really great front palate and taste that is smooth. That 80% corn really comes through. I pick up like nice cornbread, like a honey buttered cornbread on the front of the palate. And then the finish is really, really nice cinnamon. It's got a good heat, and this cinnamon, it's not a spicy, peppery finish, but it just has really, really great cinnamon and heat that really sticks with it through the end. I'm actually a little surprised that this is 86 proof, because I think it has a little bit more heat that comes through with it. I'm really impressed, and especially at a mid $20 price point. I- I'm very pleased with this, Lori. This is beyond what I was expecting coming into this. This is really good.
Thank you. That means a lot for you too, for Matt. Thank you.
Well, you can go ahead and say both of you, because I was going to agree. It's funny because he was saying the things that I was, that I was thinking in terms, especially with the cinnamon and the
Yeah,
spice.
the cinnamon is so prominent on the finish. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, and that was, I think, a big surprise to me. I was not anticipating that, especially at 80% corn. I just had it in my mind it was going to be a very sweet, a very mellow finish. But then I got that little bit of that rye spice. It was the rye spiciness coming through that came out as a cinnamon, and it hit the back of my palate, and the middle to the back of my palate. It took it a few seconds, but then it started, creeping up on me, and I could feel it kind of intensify a little bit. Not too hot, but exactly what Matt said about 86 proof. To me, it's kind of surprising to me that it's 86 proof, because I think it maybe drinks a little bit outside of its proof class, if that makes sense.
which is great, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's an extreme compliment coming from both of you. Which is it's always great to hear that people are pleasantly surprised, right?
Yep.
Especially for the price point, which goes back to the goal of Country Smooth, to create a very high quality product that is genuine to the name Country Smooth, or at least that was my intention.
Yeah.
Affordable price point, which
Yeah.
makes me very happy. Your thoughts are very important to myself and to Country Smooth, our entire family. So thank you.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. And this is one that I would not hesitate, someone that's not experienced in terms of bourbon, as a bourbon drinker or whiskey drinker, this is definitely one that I would be more than happy to pull off the shelf and say, hey, here's one that I think you should probably try as a kind of a, we always call them a gateway bourbon. It's like the gateway to the bourbon world. But Matt, what do you think? I mean,
Yeah, I think Mark, you make a good point there. A lot of times, when I look back at myself when I was first starting to drink bourbon and enjoy it, I probably wouldn't have wanted something that was really hot and spicy especially on the front of the palate, and right at the beginning of the taste, or something really oaky or leathery,
Right,
or
right.
really kind of sour or tannic, that just would immediately turn you off to it. I think this is really good. It has a lot of flavors that we were able to pick out that I think are familiar: vanillas, caramels. There's that waffle cone, and like the nice fresh corn and cornbread, and there's
Yep.
the cinnamon finish. It's got a lot of very familiar flavors. It's not overpowering one way or the other. Certainly not overpowering in a way that's just going to take someone by surprise if they're not expecting it. And I really can't get over how much I like it. And I really, really love that cinnamon and the spice coming through on the end. That's really good.
I knew you'd like it, Matt. I knew you'd like that little bit higher rye content, man.
Mhm.
I figured that was really going to get you. Okay. So now that we've wrapped up on that small batch bourbon, let's move on to our second. And this is another new product, Lori. So you want to tell us what we've got poured up for this second drink?
It is very, very new. So this is a ready-to-drink. The base is Country Smooth Small Batch Straight Bourbon Whiskey, which obviously you had. But this is called our Country Mule, which is a 72 proof lemon and lime bourbon whiskey. And it was really created because our number one signature drink from 2016 has always been the Country Mule, which traditionally the mule always is in a vodka form, but we had it formulated or really designed in a cocktail version back in 2016. And I would say that for the most part has been our most popular. It's refreshing in the summer. It's, really year round. So, we thought it was a great time to launch an RTD that was, based on formulated with all natural flavors Everything is all natural. It's
Nice.
the same whiskey that you tried the small batch. And I'm anxious to get your feedback on this.
Yeah. Matt, you've taken a little taste over there. Have you sniffed it? What do you got?
I have sniffed it, and it's. I had to catch myself for a second because we're not drinking a straight bourbon whiskey. This is a ready-to-drink cocktail here. So when I first went in, I was thinking, "Holy smokes, how did they do this with bourbon?" Then I remember this is a ready-to-drink cocktail, and it's excellent. First off, just holy smokes, it's really good. But the lemon and lime on the nose comes through. It's got the ginger.
Yeah.
Pick up that ginger coming through. And the mule is one of my favorite drinks. So this is right in my wheelhouse. It's really, really great. I'm just blown away.
I agree. It's funny because I just, smelling it, that citrus comes through, and you can still pick out, some of the bourbon notes as well. It's not as obviously going to be anywhere near as prominent, but you can still pick that out. But I think what I enjoyed was on the taste, I don't want to get too far ahead. I'm going to say that, since we're talking.
Don't give it all away here.
I'm not going
to
give it
another session around to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's probably a good idea, Matt. So Lori, I meant to ask you when we were talking about, when you started the company and you were talking about, having kids and everything. So how is it? I mean, how have you managed to find that balance, or is that just kind of an ever changing target for you to try to find the balance between Country Smooth, the brand, and you as its greatest ambassador, and then also home life and being a mom? How does that work?
That's a great question for sure. And I think if my children were, 7 years, 8 years ago in terms of age, my youngest is 10 and a half, my oldest 15 in a month. I think if they were, 10 and under, it'd be challenging because this is an all-in, business, right? So, for many years I wore all the hats. I was the chief distribution officer. I was the chief sales officer, CFO, marketing officer, you name it, which fortunately right now I'm not wearing all the hats like I did, 3 or 4 years ago, thankfully. So it's a challenge. I have a supportive husband at home, which is fantastic, and family. I mean, it really does take a village to raise 3 children with, family members and great friends. But I do believe that it's great for children to see their both parents working.
Sure.
I think that there are so many life lessons that I try to incorporate with Country Smooth with my children to teach them that, you have to work really hard in life. Nothing will be given to you, even if you're raised, financially well off. Like, in my opinion, kids have to work to be able and work hard and overcome challenges and achieve and think big, as my parents taught me. So I think that as hard as I work, over time it's gotten easier because it's not just me. I have a team of about 12 in terms of, full-time staff and also brand managers in the major regions within the U.S., which is exciting and fantastic. But I think over time, it's lots of life lessons. Plus, I'm one of those people that when I wake up until I go to bed, I'm all about what I'm doing. Whether I'm extra, like you two are obviously similar based on, getting to know you. Whether I'm working out or I'm being mom or I'm in the business or friends or family, I'm all in, full throttle. There's no in between, in my opinion. So with this business, lots of sacrifices in terms of time, but also lots of life lessons that my children, I want them to take away from. Like, okay, mom, she's not here today or tonight, but she's working really hard. And she's trying to create something far bigger than herself and far bigger than my 3 children and I and my family. So it's not easy, but it's I think something that overall has been humbling for me. And also, I remind them of where we're headed, and, it's exciting. So it's one of those things. But again, as the company has grown, I'm not quite working the 70 hours I used to work.
Right.
So I'm not working quite as much. I'm still putting in 50 plus hours, but the rewards are fantastic. And as a result, I have more time at home.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's got to be a hard balance. I mean, there's no question about that, and especially trying to grow a business because it consumes so much of your time and effort to do that. So, and then also to be hiking and planning to do a 160-mile hike, Lori, you got a lot of things on your plate right now.
Yeah, it's the challenges of that type A personality of going big into everything, right? It's like
It's very true. And
take it or leave it.
I will say credit to the team, I call it family, Country Smooth family. I wouldn't have been able to take off 2 weeks to trek the John Muir Trail in the Sierra Nevadas last summer or prior to in this business. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
We're at a place where I feel like, I'm going to have to work hard to make sure that we're good to go with production runs and formulations and ... distributors and team members and key events. But I feel like we're there, which is pretty exciting. And our family, our Country Smooth family, also feels like, okay, if Lori can be gone for 2 weeks, she obviously believes in us. She can please control for a bit of time. And I do think, just like Mark, you had mentioned, and I know Matt, as an Ironman triathlete yourself, that the achievements completed in competitive, competing in triathlons or backpacking, whatever it is, once you're able to achieve successes that you really on paper think are not even like achievable, if you will, then anything can happen. And I think that translates to business. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In a very challenging business as liquor, I think the one success and the challenges that have to be overcome to achieve success does translate into Country Smooth and the challenges we face here.
Very, very good answer. I like that. Yeah, that's great. Well, I'll tell you what, we're at the end of round 2 here. So let's take a quick break. We'll get a word from our other sponsor, and we'll be back with more with Lori Carcich, CEO of Country Smooth, in just a minute. So everybody sit tight, and we'll be right back. Hey, Bourbon Lifers. We want to take just a second and tell you a little bit about 3 Chord Whiskey. 3 Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The 3 Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they call perfectly tuned taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them all together. After each blend is completed, the 3 Chord team then applies their proprietary process of pyrolysis, that's a lot to say, isn't it? Which involves heating American oak to precise temperatures to release specific flavor and aroma compounds. Then they use another proprietary method called rhythmic disruption process, and that's more than just playing music to a bunch of barrels, which integrates all of those related compounds into the blended spirit. Finally, each small batch blend of 3 Chord is evaluated by a trained sensory panel to ensure an uncommon depth of flavor, character, aroma, and a perfectly tuned taste in each bottle. With their introductory blended bourbon, their Amplify Rye, Strange Collaboration, which is a Pinot Noir finished Kentucky bourbon, their 94 rated 12-bar reserve, and the brand new highly coveted 15-year Kentucky bourbon they call the Whiskey Drummer, there's a lot of options available from 3 Chord. Like the feeling you get when you hear that perfect song, you'll know that the 3 Chord line of whiskeys are right from the first sip. They resonate with so much flavor, you'll want an encore. Find out more about 3 Chord whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.3chordbourbon.com. All right, everybody, welcome back for the final period, Matt, the hockey reference just for you there, of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, as always, is my good buddy, Matt. Matt, I'm glad you stuck around for round 3. How you doing over there?
Oh, Mark, I'm doing great. I wouldn't miss round 3 for anything. And just like our viewers, we are so glad, our listeners, so glad that you all stuck around this far, because we are having a great show tonight with Lori Carcich, the CEO of Country Smooth. So Lori, we are back for round or session number 3, and we are still going on the Country Mule.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're having a good time with this one, Lori. It's funny, we were talking during the break about how we would drink it and kind of what our thoughts were. And this, to me, over ice would be Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to say because this is something I could see myself drinking quite a bit of. And even during the break, you brought it up. I mean, this is 72 proof. So it's not, it's not like you're drinking a glass of wine. I mean, you're drinking straight bourbon whiskey and it's 72 proof. So you're going to get a kick off of this. And if you're not careful, this country mule is going to kick you back, right?
Yes. Yes. So can I ask you guys to describe like the note, like your experience of the notes that you guys are tasting?
Yeah, Matt, go ahead because Matt always goes first because he's so good at it.
It's got a really great citrus with it. It's funny that you had mentioned the lemon and the lime. Usually when I think of a mule, I just think of the lime, but there is lemon coming through and a lemon honey almost. I don't want to say like a lemon honey tea because there's definitely no tea, but the lemon and the honey play well together in it that I'm tasting. And then of course there's that ginger, which I think since this is the small batch in it, correct? Yeah, the ginger and the cinnamon that comes off the finish of the small batch really plays great with the cinnamon or with the ginger in here. Yeah, together. I think those really mash together, and then the crispness, kind of that acid coming through from the lime and the lemon, just really balance it out. And of course, it's got the sweetness that you would have in a cocktail. It's just really well rounded, but it's like no part of a mule. Often when I get one, there's maybe too much lime or a little bit too much simple syrup. It's too sweet, or it's a little too tart, or it's way too strong. And this is just really well balanced. It's got all the good notes, and it still comes through with that heat at the end, and that really nice cinnamon and the ginger. That's just, the finish on that is really great.
Yeah, Matt, I was just going to say, man, the one thing I think that really sticks out to me the most is the fact that I still pick up that cinnamon that we talked about when we were drinking the straight bourbon by itself. And we were drinking that neat and that cinnamon, that finish that kind of creeped up on you. And I still pick that up in this, but then it's funny because as that cinnamon kind of lingers in there, it kind of transitions over to the ginger. And I get that kind of a ginger kind of, I mean, I don't want to call it a burn, but you get that effect from ginger. And that to me was probably the biggest surprise. The sweetness of it, it's not overly sweet. A lot of times you get a cocktail that is just sugar. It's sweet. You don't taste anything else in it. And that's all you taste is that overpowering sweetness. But this, like Matt said, the balance of it, it's really nice because you get the sweetness, but you get that citrus as well. But then that cinnamon and ginger kick on the end of it, man, that's just really good.
And it's interesting that you say that you experienced that with RTD, and it's not too conflicting, right? With the lemon, lime, and obviously the bitters of the mule, but it's more or less, hopefully it enhances the experience.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's what I said. If this was over ice, I can't imagine, especially like on a hot summer day, because the last thing a lot of people want to do on a hot summer day is say, "Ooh, I want to pour myself a big glass of whiskey."
It's very hot and spicy.
Yeah, I mean, last year, Matt, when we had we were talking with oh my gosh, Sean Josephs from Pinhook, we had him and we were drinking that, was it the Ride On that we drank? Yeah, the rye that was just, I mean, it was just it was refreshing, and it was funny because that was, and I think Matt, that was probably your summertime.
Yeah,
that was summertime rye, wasn't it?
The anthem of my summer last year was that rye, just the minting it. No one wants to get finished like mowing the lawn or be doing something outdoors and like pour a glass of George T. Stagg or something.
I agree. And this is something,
melt yourself into your chair.
This is something, like I said, you're still getting the taste of that straight bourbon. You're getting the finish of it. For sure. And you're getting 72 proof, but gosh, that over ice would be such a refreshing summertime drink. Just nice and easy to drink, but still get all those attributes from the bourbon. That's a really nice combo for sure.
So what would you guys consider to be like the price point of this in stores?
Ooh, that I don't know because I really don't know where RTDs fall because I just honestly generally that's not something I go to the store and buy. I just because I try to make my own. I don't make a lot of cocktails, but I'm a hot toddy in the winter, and I'm an old fashioned guy in the summer. Even the summer, I love it with the ice and everything. And that's about even though as a former bartender, that's about the limit of my cocktail making at this point. So I would probably think maybe in the upper I'm probably gonna say the mid 30s. I would think. I don't know.
And what about you, Matt?
All right, I'm gonna piggyback on Mark here, and the number that stuck out in my head was like 33 to 35.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I don't know if I'm right or wrong on it.
That's fantastic because this will SRP at $26.99.
Oh, man.
Okay, there you go. I can see this one easily being, and you're coming to Kentucky in May, right? So this will be on the shelves as well.
Yep.
So that, all right, there you go, Matt. We've got the summertime drink picked out.
Yeah.
Well, it was important, and we have an incredible flavor house that we worked with. They're incredible, and it was important that it wasn't too, like you guys said, didn't have too much sugar. All
Right.
natural flavors was key and the story, and that it did not take away from the small batch bourbon, but it only enhanced it with the flavors, right? And it was my goal that when it poured over ice over neat, people can have a really, really pleasurable cocktail experience. Or even if people want to drink country smooth or a bourbon and have a little bit of a twist, like your wife, Mark, or Matt, hopefully all the time, or any of us, that this would achieve what we were trying to do year round. So, hopefully.
Yeah. Get my wife drunk. No, I'm just kidding.
I think this over ice with like a nice floater of extra small batch on there might be the summer go-to.
Okay.
That sounds like a good combo.
For sure.
Yeah, Matt. All right, Lori. So you were talking earlier when we first started. You talked about growing up. You grew up around the brown liquors and things in your household. So I'm curious, what was your first experience with bourbon or whiskey that other than maybe sneaking a drink at your parents at your house? I mean, what was really your first introduction to whiskey?
So my dad's go-to prior to Country Smooth, obviously, was Johnny Walker.
All right. Yeah.
And Johnny Walker, obviously, clearly, the entire company brand's a legend, like legendary, not legend, legendary. Right. That was my dad's go-to, and he still prefers it, but he'll drink Country Smooth day and night over, obviously, Johnny Walker, clearly. But in terms of American whiskeys or bourbon, I would say Jim Beam was sort of like familial go-to. Crown Royal, which is, I know, Canadian blended, but a very, very smooth, different, entirely different experience.
Sure.
And Woodford Reserve.
Yeah.
Three from American, actually not Canadian, it's not American, but I would say Crown Royal, Woodford Reserve, and Jim Beam were the whiskeys that I was, most often introduced to, and I just, again, fantastic, amazing products, but it took a lot for me to leave my Rombauer Chardonnay.
Sure.
Right?
I get it. No.
So, but now you can't even turn me away from Country Smooth, even if Rombauer is there. And I still have a profound respect for Rombauer, but I prefer Country Smooth American whiskey now, the small batch bourbon and the mule, ... So,
... Uh-oh.
I mean, the additional products that we have coming out, not in May, but, June and thereafter, which we can talk, as eventually. And again, I learned from all those companies, and I have a profound respect for like Pinhook. But I really do think the entire American whiskey and bourbon environment is fascinating. I think it's really hard pressed to match the respect and support that these producers have for each other in really any other spirit that I've found, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like what we keep hearing from a lot of people is that rising tides raise all ships. It's when the industry standards and the attention to detail and the care goes up, it takes everyone with it. And it's really great to see that everyone that we've talked to, from the large, huge companies to the small distilleries that are doing just a couple barrels a day, just the respect they have for each other and how much they're all in it together. They're, of course, they're all competing against each other, but they don't look at it like that. They all enjoy each other's products. They love what everybody's doing. It's a friendship. It's a community, and that's the fun thing. The way everybody looks at it, I really admire that about this industry.
And it really is. I mean, really, when you go and and as a newbie, when I did the Kentucky trail, and then visited a few distilleries in Tennessee and went to other parts of the country, I walked away with those tours with nothing but profound respect and appreciation. And every different distillery and company, and obviously we don't own a distillery, but we have a brand and a company and family behind it. I love each and every one of them because they're all unique and they're committed to their company. And I think that's incredible. So.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. Speaking of appreciation, I've been, nobody can see what we're, we can see each other on the recording here, but we don't record the video. But I'm kind of sad that we're not, because where you are, Lori, there's like entire wall of guitars. And I keep my attention keeps shifting to the wall of guitars that's behind you there. So can you tell us a little bit about that? What's going on there?
So absolutely. I am in Palm Springs at a really, really good, one of my best friend's house in Palm Springs, and they love music and they have an affinity for music and appreciation. And fortunately, they have an incredible music room that I'm currently in with you. And right behind me is that Beatles collection.
Nice. So guitars that actually were played at one point in time by members of the Beatles.
What era? Correct. Era. So the era. I mean, Beatles era.
Okay. Gotcha.
My girlfriend who owns all the guitars is here with me, and she's incredible. In fact, she is the founder of Spa Girl Cocktails.
Okay.
Incredibly exciting and inspiring company, and so she and I are definitely inspirations for each other's businesses. So I would say 50 guitarists in this room.
Yes.
Goodness.
For Beatle era, correct? Meaning each Beatle played that specific guitar, and it's one or two numbers off the actual production number.
Did you guys hear?
Oh, yeah, I did. Yeah. So it's one or two numbers off the actual production. So yeah, that's just awesome. So, I play bass guitar, and that's really cool just to see that, because I've got 3 hanging on my wall, and I thought that was really cool, but yeah, it's nothing quite like what you got there. So
cool, because you're an Ironman triathlete, you're a bartender, an attorney, and a guitar player, and you are the Bourbon Life coach. So I mean, honest to God,
Matt, you're not going to be able to get my head through the door tonight, man. I mean, come on, goodness gracious. So Lori, let me ask you a question. I mean, you're in the whiskey industry now. You've been in it for about 6 years, I guess, right? So, and the whiskey industry has predominantly been a male-dominated industry. So, I'm just curious, what has been for you one of the biggest obstacles as you tried to get into the industry and as you've grown your brand? What's been the biggest obstacle that you have faced?
So I have been I journal almost every day, and I've been working on a book called Breaking the Barrel.
Nice.
Which is the challenges and achievements of life, and as day in life of a female, founder, CEO, and owner of a whiskey company in a male-dominated space, incorporated with mommyhood and backpacking and friends and the whole thing.
Sure.
I think that in the early days, obviously, I had a strong business background and very much rooted in accounting and finance and friendships and relationships but no liquor experience. That's a very steep hill. You want to talk,
Sure.
like we're all competitors and we like a serious physical challenge. Starting our whiskey company with no experience in alcohol is as steep as it gets. And my girlfriend Karen, who's the founder of Spa Girl, is nodding her head because she was the same in alcohol as well for her company. Very steep, but the passion I have and that fire in my soul and the commitment to Country Smooth saw me through each of the challenges, and they still exist. But I will say that over time, it's like, 2 steps forward, 10 steps back in the first year, right? With
Right.
And I think year 2, it was like, hey, we can do 3 steps forward and 6 steps backwards. Meaning, it's not all downhill. Like, hey, we're finishing our triathlon or our backpacking trip, but it's not as difficult because you've proven that you're in it to win it. You've proven that you're committed to your company, no matter the challenge, and the product's really good. I think most first and foremost. And I think every year, every success that we've had, the more scans we have, the additional distributors that we have get behind us, it does become easier. And at the end of the day, I think that when the product speaks for itself, with people like the 2 of you, and products now plural, that really says it all, to us. So I think that over time, people have realized, okay, they've been in business for 5 years, now more than 5 years. And the team is growing, the distribution footprint's growing, the product line's growing. We're launching a national PR campaign in middle of May. I think that distributors and chain buyers and consumers are aware of this, right? So I think it gets a little bit easier. So maybe in 2021 it's 5 steps forward and maybe 3 steps back. Does that make sense to you?
It does. Yeah. All right. So Lori, we talked about some of the challenges and some of the adversities that you faced. So I'm just curious, is there anything that from your side that turned out to be kind of a big surprise, like a pleasant surprise in the industry, something that you maybe weren't expecting, something that's happened to you that that's really, been really, really good for you?
Right. So I think that, I live by the 3 Ps in my life and in business, really. It's passion, people, and perseverance. And I think that the biggest, surprise positively are people. And the people are, team members, distributors, which is, distributors and chain buyers and team members are huge. And we've been fortunate to meet some pretty incredible ones who have given us a chance, really as a small company and growing with 1 product until now, versus several other companies who have maybe 3, 4, 5, 10, 15. I think that those people along the way, and in some markets, it's a distributor who believes in me and the company behind us and the product, or maybe it's a chain buyer in a state where it's 125 stores, and they say, you know what, we believe in what you represent, your product, all of that. And I do think that that's been the biggest surprise for sure. Also, there are lots of people who really support the small companies, just in general, whether it's the Bourbon Women Association, which we're now tied
right.
the Women of the Vine and Spirits, and again, I'm fortunate to have a team nationally to promote Country Smooth and represent Country Smooth, that it's exciting. But, you don't find those people day one, right? In a new company. It takes lots of hard work, lots of showing people that you're in it for the long term and the long haul. And obviously, without a good product and a genuine story, you don't find those people like the 2 of you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. So, we're getting close. Actually, we kind of run over a little bit, but no big deal. But so let's talk about kind of the future. What does the future hold for Lori, and what does the future look like for Country Smooth?
Right. So we're fortunate coming out of COVID. Obviously, 2020 changed, I think, all of us, right? Whether we're
Sure.
it just in any industry, all walks of life, 2020 was not a year like any other. And I think we can all pretty much attest to that.
Yep.
So we came out of 2020 with, Country Mule and a small batch bourbon. And we launched in 2 markets, actually 3 markets in the end of 2020. And now we have another 6 that we're currently launching into. So I think for Country Smooth and for myself being the leader of Country Smooth in the face, it's new products. Mm-hmm. We just tried 2 tonight together, which is exciting, which brings us to 3. And additional markets. We're currently in 11 states, newly 4 this week and next week, opening another 5, and a national PR campaign, and just awesome people behind the brand. Again, I go back to the 3 Ps, and without one of the 3 Ps, this, Country Smooth does not fully operate or become successful. So very excited and hopeful, and thankful for the opportunity to introduce Country Smooth officially to you 2 awesome men, and who we are and the products that we have and we're developing. And I hope to meet you both in person in Kentucky in May or June.
Yeah, that would be great. Mm-hmm. Definitely would be a good time for sure. So where can our listeners find out more about you and your brand?
So our website is countrysmooth.com. And on Instagram, which is @countrysmooth, and on Facebook as well. Those are I would say the 3 best locations to learn more about Country Smooth.
Yeah, and I follow you guys on Instagram as well. So definitely give them a follow. So it's a good place to get information about what's going on with the brand. So all right. So Matt, I guess we should finish it out, talk about our final thoughts. Well, you can tell my final thoughts on the Country Mule because my glass is empty for the 2nd time already. So Matt, what about you? What do you think?
Absolute winner.
Yeah.
And at the price point, I was blown away that you're able to give such a product that tastes so good, but still retains a lot of the characteristics of the small batch bourbon whiskey. And especially at that price point, Lori, this is hands down. It's a hands down go-to. I fully recommend it.
Thank you. That means a lot to myself, obviously, but to the entire Country Smooth family. Means a lot because you 2 are the professionals. Your words are very impactful and important. So thank you. And we have a few other products coming, but mid 2021, we'll make sure to have you guys take a look at and give us your honest feedback and thoughts. But It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah. We've been following you guys for a few years, and we're excited to finally be invited to be on your show. So thank you guys, and let's definitely meet in person soon.
Yeah, we definitely do that. And thank you, Lori. We really, really appreciate that one. So Matt, before we wrap it up, anything else you want to add before we close it out?
No, Lori, the pleasure really has been all ours. So thank you so much for taking the time and being patient with us through our technology issues here and for introducing us to Country Smooth. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lori. Really appreciate that. And I'm going to thank our sponsors before we get out of here. Again, the Stave Restaurant out there in Millville, Kentucky, making some great food. Chef Kyle Klatka is making some excellent stuff. Check them out online, thestavekentucky.com, right there between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve on McCracken Pike. And then also 3 Chord Bourbon, our newest, I keep saying our newest sponsor. It's been like 5 months now, so I should probably stop saying that, Matt. I mean, they're our sponsor. So we really appreciate 3 Chord being on board with us. Speaking of music, Neil Giraldo, can never say his last name. The founder of that, Pat Benatar's actual guitarist and husband as well. So he started that business, but the master blender and distiller Ari Sussman, we just think what he's doing is just great. So we really appreciate their support. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up, send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the Bourbon Life.